Shaq, Charles Barkley, and GLP-1 medication. I have to admit, this story makes me smile a little bit. And people my age are always curious when the sports heroes of their youth show up in the news. And so let's talk about Charles and Shaquille. Charles Barkley is now 63 years old. That's hard for me to believe. Shaquille O'Neal is 54. I think they both look pretty good for their age. But I'm trying to get my mind around their age because I still remember them primarily as two great big men of the NBA. I loved watching these guys play when I was a young man. And that was back when the NBA actually played basketball. I mean, there was defense, there was contact, there was rebounding, there were hard fouls. Nobody was taking 7 steps across the lane and calling it a Euro step. That drives me insane. Back then, if you were in the paint, you were probably going to meet somebody's shoulder, elbow, hip, or forearm. And that's how I played basketball because I wasn't that gifted athletically, that big or fast. So I just kind of pushed people around in the paint is how I scored and how I played defense. So two of the most entertaining big men from that era, Shaq and Charles Barkley. And if you remember, Charles Barkley at one point was nicknamed the Round Mound of Rebound. Great nickname. And honestly, that nickname was perfect. Charles was net 7 feet tall. He was listed at 6'6", but was probably more like 6'3", 6'4". But he was a big man, and he played power forward, and he took up space. Barkley played like a force of nature. He could rebound, explode up the court, finish at the rim, a ferocious dunker. Bully people who were taller than him. And for a man with his build, his agility and jumping ability were just really incredible. And then there was Shaq. Shaquille O'Neal was 7'1", massive, powerful, and somehow still agile in a way that almost did not make sense. Now, if you remember late career Shaq, like when he was playing for the Celtics, you need to go on YouTube and look at like when he was at LSU and his early career. He was an athletic freak, breaking backboards, running the floor, jumping, spinning, dunking. He made grown NBA centers look like substitute teachers trying to break up a cafeteria fight. So now here we are years later, and both Shaq and Charles Barkley are part of the public GLP-1 conversation. And honestly, that feels pretty significant to me. Charles has been open about using Mounjaro, which is the brand name for Tirzepatide, when prescribed for type 2 diabetes. I use Mounjaro. I have type 2 diabetes as well. Tirzepatide works on GLP-1 and GIP receptors, so people often talk about it in the broader GLP-1 medication category. Charles has said he lost a significant amount of weight while using Mounjaro along with diet and exercise, and in typical Charles Barkley fashion, he has not been shy or delicate about it. In fact, Shaq even used to tease him on camera about it. There was a funny moment where Shaq was joking around, talking like he was the Ozempic FBI, and Charles corrected him, "Mounjaro, you fool." And that is exactly why people love those two together on camera. They can talk about serious things, but they are also hilarious. They tease each other like brothers. One moment they're talking basketball, the next minute Shaq is poking at Charles. Charles is firing back. Kenny Smith is laughing, and Ernie Johnson is just trying to keep the train on the tracks. They're a great team. But underneath the comedy, there's actually something important happening. These are two huge, strong, athletic men who made a living off their bodies and their minds, two smart men as well. These were elite athletes. They were not lazy people. They were not people who lacked discipline. These were men who trained, competed, battled, and performed at the highest physical level in the world. And even though they are dealing with, and even these elite athletes, are dealing with the same health realities that millions of regular people deal with: weight gain, aging, metabolic health, sleep issues, and the long-term consequences of carrying extra weight. Shaq's story is especially interesting because his recent GLP-1 conversation has been tied to obstructive sleep apnea. That's something I also have. I sleep with a CPAP. CPAP changed my life for the good. If you haven't tried one out yet and you have sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a very common problem associated with obesity. Not always. Thin people can have sleep apnea too, but excess weight is one of the major risk factors. And sleep apnea is not just loud snoring. It can mean your breathing is repeatedly interrupted while you sleep. That can affect your energy, your blood pressure, your heart health, your focus, your mood, and your overall quality of life. People have actually died as a result of sleep apnea in their sleep. So this isn't, the reason I got my CPAP was because when I got married for the first time, I snored so badly, my wife moved into the other room. So I had to investigate it, but I'm so glad I did. It changed my life. I didn't realize, I thought everybody woke up every 10 minutes all night. Ends up, no, you can sleep for hours and hours without waking up. So Shaq has talked about using Zepbound, which is also Tirzepatide, as a part of addressing weight-related obstructive sleep apnea. And this is important because Zepbound has now been approved for adults with obesity and moderate to severe obstructive sleep apnea. So if you need to qualify for Tirzepatide in the form of Mounjaro or Zepbound, sleep apnea can qualify you for that, not just diabetes. So this is not just celebrity weight loss gossip. This is connected to very real medical issues. And I think this is worth saying out loud because sometimes people act like using a GLP-1 is cheating. But when you see people like Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal talking about it, it reminds us that obesity is not just a willpower problem. These guys were world-class athletes. They had toughness, they had discipline, they had trainers, coaches, money, access, and motivation. And they're smart guys. Shaq is worth, I think, $400-500 million. Charles Barkley's worth like $80 million. Very successful businessmen, managed their money well. And still later in life, weight and health became complicated. That feels very human to me. This is struggles that even some of the most successful people athletically and financially, they still struggle with these problems. I appreciate the humor they bring to it. Charles Barkley is not out there pretending he discovered kale and inner peace. Shaq is not giving us some fake motivational speech from a mountaintop. They're still Shaq and Charles. They joke, they tease, they give each other a hard time. And for me, as someone on my own GLP-1 journey, I find that encouraging. If the round mound of Rebound can talk about Mounjaro and Shaq can talk about Zepbound and sleep apnea, maybe the rest of us can stop whispering about what it's like and acting like it's some kind of shameful secret. Maybe we can just say this is medicine, this is health, this is aging, this is complicated. And yeah, sometimes it's funny. Because if Shaq and Charles are involved, it's definitely going to be funny. All right, take care. I'll see you in the next one.